Hi, I'm Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that focuses on musicians, authors, and interesting people. We like to say we're making a difference one artist at a time. So sit back, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. Today on the Someone You Should Know podcast, we are truly honored to welcome a musical luminary whose work has left an indelible mark on the music industry and also the film industry, too. He's best known for co-writing the iconic hits I Had the Time of My Life and Hungry Eyes. You remember that from the Dirty Dancing soundtrack. His contributions have earned him an Academy Award, a Golden Globe, and a Grammy nomination. Now, from his early days of working in jazz with a group called Flight to producing legends, this guy is truly a testament to the passion and versatility in music. Let's delve into the stories behind the songs and the man who crafted them with my new friend, John DeNicola. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing well today.
John, the question I always love to start with is, what was the moment that got you thinking about a career in music?
Ooh, I knew, I think, out of the womb. I don't know. Music always, as a youngster, a little kid, I grew up, my first 8 years were in Amityville, New York, on Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
The Amityville Horror.
Dun, dun, dun.
I am not him, but I was playing a gig one of the nights when that happened in Amityville. But
well, that's a story in itself, John.
That's a story in itself. There was music in the house. My dad in the basement had, what was back then a tape machine and speakers on the walls, and my mother played piano by ear. And one of the first things, my oldest brother, had a guitar, a harmony guitar sitting around in the basement. I spent a lot of time in the basement. And I picked it up. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just picking the strings. My left hand was doing nothing, and I heard my mother say to my dad upstairs, "Sounds like he'd be good on guitar."
Ooh.
So that's just the mom.
Nice to have mom in your court.
Yeah. And I just, I don't know if that was I remember it. I don't know if that was an impetus to get me, but I remember as a youngster hearing Pretty Woman.
Roy Orbison, of course, yeah.
Roy Orbison and something about, his, I mean, there was a lot of music of that day that I loved. I was just drawn to it, but, his mournful voice, the unrequited love of the woman that he couldn't, and then she comes back at the end, so I don't know. I can still feel, and I'm drawn to not that that's kind of minor, but I'm drawn to those heartstring type chord changes and melodies. That's I just somehow that moves me.
Me too.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of chord progression. That is the whole thing. As far as if you can got something interesting, we throw some sevenths in there, and you really kind of do some augmented chords and such like that. That really and truly kind of I like that. I like that.
Tugs on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, your journey began as a bassist. You were a bassist with a jazz fusion group called Flight, and you guys even secured a deal with Motown Records. Tell us about those early experiences and how that adapted into your songwriting and production styles.
Yeah, that was like a little bit of a sidestep. I was into, music through high school and somehow morphed into a big Frank Zappa fan.
Oh, really? So, okay, very good.
Yeah, I know, oddly enough.
Uh-huh.
And then, Jaco Pastorius came along.
Oh gosh, yeah, what a great
Weather Report, I began to hone my craft as a bass player.
Right.
And Flight had a couple of records out on Capitol. They got dropped, and then I joined the band. I was actually at Berklee College of Music, and my keyboard player friend, Jimmy Yeager, rest in peace, called me and said, "Listen, we're gonna try and get a record deal again." So I came down and came back from Boston and joined the band, and we would rehearse 6 hours a day, and And then we did showcases for Columbia Records and a number of places in Motown. Um, Lee, oh gosh, what was Lee's last name? Signed us. His brother was Lester Young, Lee Young. His brother was Lester Young.
I like the way you
And
deduced that. That was very brilliant.
yeah. And
Awesome.
that's how Flight came about. We did a record, and then we broke up with the horn player, so we tried to do another record. But that record was sampled. A song called "Face to Face" was sampled by Erykah Badu for her big hit back in the day.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
it was sampled.
Any royalties from that, maybe?
Not for me, for Pat.
Oh, okay.
Hornbeck, who wrote the song, although he wrote Jimmy and I wrote the kind of the part that they sampled.
Oh,
you know.
okay. All right, very good.
But yeah, no. So I mean, that was fun. It was a fun project, fun band. I feel like the record could have sounded better, but my son's friends love it. He has a bunch of
Wonderful. Good.
music people, and they're blown away by it. But as quickly after that, I started getting back to my rock and soul roots. Really, I was a Steve Winwood epic fan.
Oh, Traffic. I love Traffic. Spencer Davis Group, also Blind Faith. Yeah, Stevie Winwood. I got so lucky I got a chance to sit with him one time, and I asked him, I said,
"Oh, did you?
Steve, can you explain to me, one of my all-time favorite songs is The Low Spark of High Heeled Boys. I said, can you explain the lyrics behind that particular song? And I don't know if he was having a bad day or if he was hungover or whatever, but it would just basically, my music is a combination of sounds and words. And I'm going, that's what I got out of it.
That's what I would expect him to say. He, because his mostly that was Jim Capaldi.
Yeah.
Who wrote those lyrics.
I love that song.
And I'm not unlike Stevie Winwood, not that I'm in the same category, but I'm more on the music side. And then I have some lyrical ideas, but I usually work with a lyricist. Mm-hmm. Although I also have written some songs completely, but I like to work with a lyricist. So that's I'm sure that was the short answer he wanted.
Yeah, probably. Next question.
Yeah. I was 12 years old, 1967, whatever, 68, 67. My mom said, my cousin, much older cousin, had a family, and she and her husband were supplied to mom and pop stores records. What am I trying to say?
Right, yeah, rack jobbers type thing. Yeah.
Rack jobbers. Mm-hmm. And they let me go in. And my mom said, you can have 3 records. And here's this 12-year-old. I went in and I picked up Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced? Moby Grape.
Okay.
Which I've never left. And Steve Winwood's, it was the first Traffic album,
okay. Dear Mr. Fantasy. Okay, yeah, very good. Awesome, very good. Great, another great song, too. I just absolutely loved that realm of music, that late 60s, starting to go into the 70s. Traffic was one of my all-time favorites, and I just loved some of the long tracks. Being a disc jockey, too, Low Spark of High Heel Boys at 12 minutes was great for microwaving dinner, going to the bathroom. It was great. Yeah. And you just turned the speaker on so you could hear it throughout the building as you did what you needed to do.
That sounds perfect.
Now, your songwriting, let's step ahead one decade or so. As we go into the 80s, one of the most popular movies of the 80s, of course, was Dirty Dancing. And boy, did you have some involvement with that movie. You co-wrote I've Had the Time of My Life and Hungry Eyes. And it really and truly catapulted you into the spotlight. Can you take us behind the writing of those particular songs and how they got selected for the film?
Sure. Well, I'll start with Hungry Eyes because I was working at a studio in New Jersey with a fellow named Dave Prater, who was a good friend of
Okay.
mine. They had been
From
in
Dave.
bands with me. Maybe you know Dave. Um, and Frankie was also separately working with Dave. And Frankie was in a band called Frankie and the Knockouts. Frankie's
Oh
my
God, you're
co-writer.
kidding.
Oh
Sweetheart, I
no,
love that
yeah,
song.
great song, great voice,
Was it
right?
Millennium Records or Hollywood Records or something like
Yes,
that? Yeah.
Millennium,
Millennium, yeah.
Millennium. So
Oh, dear
speaking of,
God, you're kidding me.
yeah, yeah, you didn't know that?
Oh, I used to play that
Yeah.
song when it was a current.
Oh, it's great. It's a great one.
1981, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
God.
So Frankie had gotten dropped by Millennium
Yeah.
Records after doing two records, and that was Jimmy Einer owned that label. So Jimmy years later, so I was, let's see, I'm trying to get the chronology here. So I was recording at the studio. Frankie was separately recording at the studio. I had this track of music, and Frankie was trying to get a new record deal, and he was trying to put together songs to send out to record labels. And Dave Prater gave him my track of what it became Hungry Eyes. It was just the music, just as you hear it. Take the voice off, the whole dung, 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 and all that was all in that track. And Frankie said, I'd love to try and work on this. And so we wrote Hungry Eyes for Frankie Privet, Frankie and the Knockout.
Oh, my God.
And we did a bunch of songs. We did about 10 songs together. And during that time, Frankie got a call from Jimmy Einer. And Jimmy said, listen, I'm working on this movie. It's called Dirty Dancing. And they need a song for the final scene. It's a big dance, and told us the story quickly. Kid gets accused of stealing the wallet and, he's from the wrong side of the tracks and blah, blah, blah. And, but it wasn't like we had the gig. It was like, submit songs like everybody else.
Right.
So, Eleanor Bergstein, a good friend of ours, who wrote the movie Dirty Dancing, she will tell us that, and also Ken Ortega, who was the choreographer, and they were they were filming out a sequence. They're going to film that closing, dance thing. And they were bummed because they could not find a song. They were dancing to a temp song that Lionel Richie had. I forget what song it was. And they were listening, and they put back in the cassette days. They're putting cassettes in of demos, and disheartened because they were about to film this scene, and and even Patrick Swayze years later told us that they weren't that excited about the movie until they put in one of the last songs into the cassette deck, and it was our song, "The Time of My Life." And they all looked at each other and they just went, "This is it. Are we crazy, or this is the song?" So there were a couple of things. They wanted to slow it down a little bit, and they wanted to add some Latin percussion and stuff like that. And from the stories we get, that turned the whole production around. They filmed that scene. When you see the movie, you can see Patrick mouthing the words. He's actually mouthing to Frankie singing our demo.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even have the final recording yet. And they said that just saved the whole day. I mean, the song just made everybody go, "Whoa, we got this scene at the end that's going to be awesome." So it kind of revitalized. Not that it was dying on the vine, but they didn't have this direction. And once they had that finale, they knew they had something.
When the songs were finished, as far as they were of course recorded by Eric Carmen and Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes did, I Had the Time of My Life. What were your thoughts when you first heard these songs?
Well, the Eric Carmen version of Hungry Eyes was a shock to us because we had now gone in to meet with Emil Ardolino, sweetheart director, may he rest in peace, and Eleanor, and they needed another song. Um, we had already gotten Hungry Eyes into it, so we were going back to see a third scene, and Emil said to us, um, what's the tempo on Hungry Eyes? What's the tempo of the final? We said, well, we're about to go in to record the final. We had studio time booked and everything. Frankie was singing it and I was playing. And they go, oh, no, it's already been done. Eric Carmen sang it. And we were like, what? It was kind of a shock to us. So not that, it's just that it was shocking that because we were told one thing, it didn't happen, which we don't complain about because it's obviously a wonderful. Eric did a wonderful job. May he rest in peace. He did a wonderful job singing, and we're of course very proud of it. But yeah, he's a kind of defined a. I don't want to say I don't like the word power pop, but that's the genre kind of that he helped found, I would say. At the time of my life was another one. We knew Bill Medley was going to sing it, although he was hesitant because when Frankie did the demo, he sang it up up an octave. So he was the same range as the woman because Frankie's a tenor. And Bill was like, how am I going to do this song? I mean, it's way out of my range. But, Jimmy convinced him, bring it down an octave. And of course, it actually made more sense because now you could really delineate Bill representing, Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Warnes representing Jennifer Grey. We didn't know who the female was going to be yet. We knew it was Bill Medley. So I was excited. Both Frankie and I were big Righteous Brothers fans. Yeah. So, Blue-Eyed Soul thing. And we had heard names bantered, Diana Ross, Donna Summer, but she didn't like the title, Dirty Dancing. A couple of other people, but and then when Jennifer came through, of course, it was just perfect. She has that instrument of a voice. So
right, because she was just right off the Joe Cocker one from like a couple years prior to that. Right.
That's right.
Up Where We Belong.
And, we were excited. It was a small film company. It wasn't a lot of money involved. It was Vestron Pictures. They had never really done a movie. They had done videos, and so our expectations were, let's see what happens here. And then of course it just took off. It took off. The movie took off, and then the song made the movie take off. First the movie took off, which. Then the song was released and it hit the top of the charts, and that pushed the movie. So they pushed each other.
Like Saturday Night Fever, very much that whole thing.
Sure.
Exactly. Now let's talk about the time that you and Frankie and everyone got the Academy Award.
Yes.
And the Golden Globe. I mean, I have no frame of mind for that particular thing. What was it like, one, to get nominated, and two, to actually get up there and accept the award?
Well, the nomination was, of course, exciting. The song, we're just talking like a few months into the film release, and we have hindsight here. It wasn't the iconic song. I'm going to call it an iconic song because it's one of the top 15 most played songs for ASCAP in history. So, it wasn't that yet, you know what I mean? So we were excited, but we didn't. One of the things Frankie and I talked about was while we're sitting in the audience at the Oscars, the productions they would, like, every 30 minutes there'd be one of the songs that was nominated, and they do different productions on stage, and others were blown out big productions, and ours was just a little, it was Jennifer and Bill Medley on stage, but it was a little tiny, so we're like, oh man, could we have won? I think we won. It was a tiny production on our song. The other, I think it was, I forget what movie it was from, but it was like 30 people marching down the aisles.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So we were a little not surprised. I mean, Yeah, it was surprising. I mean, everybody gets surprised when their name gets called. It was a fun night. I got to meet Burt Lancaster.
Oh, yeah.
And Candy came over to us. So sweet. These are the people that kind of picked us out. And I guess this is after the award because we were holding Oscars. And Jack Nicholson comes up to, it's your night, fellas. Enjoy yourselves tonight. It's your night. So we got to meet a bunch of,
Wonderful. I love
people.
that.
But I was living, down in the village at the time, and New York City goes till 4, 5, 6 in the morning. It's subdued. LA was like subdued compared, because they close up at 1. You're out of the bars. So it seemed a little subdued. But it's surreal. It's a surreal moment in your life.
Very good. Very good. All right. Now, I decided we're going to do something here. We've talked about Hungry Eyes, and I found a copy that you had on one of your albums called The Why Because. Fresh take on the classic. How did it feel to interpret your own work?
Well, it was a little scary. My first record I didn't do till 2019. So I was always working in bands or trying to write for other people and get covers. And in fact, this started, there was a song called You're the Only One, which is the first song on Because, and it's the albums, me doing a record started with that song because it was in a Sylvester Stallone movie called Avenging Angelo. The song was sung by Steve Holy.
Oh, but country singer, yeah.
Yeah, it was never released. It was released in the movie, but it was never out on where people could buy it or whatever.
Okay.
So I felt like, gosh, we have to re-demo this and try and get somebody to cover it, again. And I tracked it the way I'd always kind of wanted to hear it, kind of more like a Jimmy Webb type song. When we're talking about Hungry Eyes here, we're talking about You're the Only One. Okay. And when it came to get somebody to sing it, I just said, well, I'd sung through the years, mostly backup, and I'd done a couple of lead things. And I said, well, let me put my voice on it. And I did. And I had a lot of fun doing that. So and people were responding well to it. So I decided to look into my catalog and find songs I could sing for myself.
Right, yeah.
After all these years. And I was shying away from Hungry Eyes and The Time of My Life for obvious reasons. And I actually, my son came up to me and said, well, do Hungry Eyes like, if you do it. There's a lot of bands, modern indie rock bands that are kind of influenced by 80s synth pop. To name a couple, Alex G or Tame Impala, that kind of stuff. And he had an idea how to play drums on it. He's a drummer. And so that's what sort of started my version of Hungry Eyes. Keep it, because I don't want to, obviously, I'm not going to compete with the originals. That seemed like a good approach. And that's what I did.
Wonderful. Tell you what, we're going to showcase that song right now. Here is Hungry Eyes, the writer and the singer, John DeNicola, right here on the Someone You Should Know podcast. That's the man who wrote the song, doing his own version of Hungry Eyes. He's our guest, John DeNicola. And in just a minute, we'll get back to our interview with John. But first, I want to say thanks so much for tuning into the Someone You Should Know podcast. We're so very blessed to have our friends over at Buzzsprout spreading the word. They get us out to like 17 different platforms. They're working hard behind the scene to get us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Podcast Addict and Pocket Cast. They're, like I say, there's 17 of them. So all you have to do is just look for the Someone You Should Know podcast, okay? And also thanks to our good friends at Buzzsprout. They tell us that they're the ones that provide all the stats. 2,850 cities in 107 countries is where our listenership is, so it blows my mind. I want to thank a couple of those cities: Vallejo, California; Woodland Park, Colorado; Hayes, Kansas; and Grimsby over there in Ontario, Canada. Thanks so very much for tuning in to Someone You Should Know podcast, heard wherever quality streaming audio is available. We're speaking with musical luminary John DeNicola today. John, in 1995, you founded OMAD Records. What inspired you to establish your own label, for one thing? And then can you tell us some of the artists who are on the label we should know about?
That's a good question. I think, it's a really, the business has changed a lot, and stuff, music that comes out now in the United States, in the pop realm, is very pop and very,
Highly produced.
Yeah, it's like in some ways you could put this a different voice, different voices on the same track, and no one would be the wiser. I grew up in a time, as we were discussing, and I hate to sound like the old man, get off my lawn thing, but
I'm right with you there, pal. We're not far from the same. We're pretty close to the same age, so.
I mean, right. If you look at the heyday of when I was a kid, or the pop charts had Janis Joplin, Big Brother and the Holding Company, and then the Beatles, and then Jimi Hendrix, and then Santana, all who had a stamp and a identity, and you weren't going to, it didn't sound like the same music done by different people. It was varied and interesting and different, and it was the early days of rock music, and that's so I guess not wanting to play the game anymore of will you please do my song and record it and blah blah blah. I just started to find people that I enjoyed working with. One of the first people we found was Maroon. Well, they weren't Maroon 5; they were Kara's Flowers, and they went on to become Maroon 5. But that was one of the first bands we went after. We actually didn't get them out on our label because Warner Brothers picked them up. But it was mostly because I wanted to not be tied down to anything, just do, music that I wanted to record and produce. You see the studio behind me here. I love having artists come in and, help them shape their sound, do what I can to add my many years in the business to bring out what they want and the best in them. And so I think that's what the impetus was, just to sort of do an alter ego of, not ego, but alternate route to get people to hear music that I wanted them to hear.
Right. Very good. And one of those actually evolved into an album that you did called She Said. And I want to feature a track from there that I just absolutely fell in love with. First time I heard it, I'm going, oh gosh, I love the opening. I love the texture of it. It's just so rich. And can you tell us about the song called Love Divine?
Yeah. Well, that was a song actually I had written with Patty Maloney, who I've written a lot of stuff with. I revisited it. It was slightly different. I was in a band with her called Ordinary Madness for a while, and we had it a certain way. And I revisited that and reshaped it. And again, after the first record, the Why Because, me in this, I'm in the barn. I have a barn. I have a recording studio in the barn. And I have all these instruments. I have everything you could ever imagine. And like I said, I'm a bass player, but I can eke out a track on all these instruments. And so that's me playing the sitar, me playing the tempura on that song, me playing the piano. I'm playing everything but the drums, I think. So I get to, it's like I don't want to say man cave, but it is a little bit. I get come out here and just lay tracks down. And I don't know, my wife had a harmonium. And so that's how the very beginning of Love Divine starts, with the harmonium.
Mm-hmm.
Sitar comes in. And I feel like all the years in the business has shaped how I just go. I just start the recorder and I go. And that's how that song came about.
I love it. Absolutely. Let's feature that song right now. Here is Love Divine from my podcast guest, John DeNicola.
I got the word you're back in town, moving slow but covering ground. They say you're looking really fine. They say you're asking for me. I curse the day you left my side. I curse this world
That's a song with real deep, rich vibe. Love Divine from John DeNicola. John's my guest today on the Someone You Should Know podcast. John, you mentioned this before we played that song. You started working with Kara's Flowers, which later became Maroon 5. What was it like working with Adam Levine and the guys at those early stages?
It was awesome. My partner at the time, music partner, production partner, Tommy Allen, was living in Malibu, and he would walk down the beach and he heard this band coming out of a garage, and he went over and talked to them, and he said, "Wow, you guys are fantastic." And this was Kara's Flowers, and we'd like to take you into the studio. And so we started it off with a 1-day demo. We said, let's just go in and see what it's like working together. And we did 4 songs, and boy, I listen to them now, they sound awesome. But so we spent a good many months then. Once they said yes, let's do this. So we on OMAD Records, we went into the studio. We went into the finest studios out in L.A. and tracked with those guys. We started in Sound City, which is I think what's the guy from Nirvana, the guitarist? He bought it.
Dave Grohl?
Yeah, Dave Grohl. He bought the Neve console from that studio or something like that. Anyway, we started there. We did our basics there, and then we went into a place called Rumbo Studios out in Sherman Oaks, and we spent many months working together. And you could see how the talent was brimming. I mean, all of the members, but particularly Adam. I mean, he was a great guitarist, a great singer. You could just see they were special. You could see it. I mean, it was obvious. And we finished that record, but it never came out because Warner Brothers picked it up because Rob Cavallo heard it, and they basically bought us out. There was a couple of the songs were like B-sides that we had done. They bought us out, and we had 4 points on their next record or whatever. We were disappointed because, I would say a year and a half later, Rob's dad, Bob Cavallo, said, I was speaking to him on some other issue, and he said, you know what? We should have just put out that record because it had the enthusiasm of the first time recording. And these kids, they were just 16 at the time.
Oh, you're kidding me. I had no idea. Jeez. Yeah.
And, he said, I really think you guys captured something. So that record didn't take off, the one that Rob did. And they broke up for a while, and then they reformed as Maroon 5.
Awesome. Love it. Love those kind of stories. Now, John, your collaborations span a diverse range of artists, from working with Eddie Money to Bernie Worrell. How do you adapt your songwriting and production techniques to cater to such varied musical styles? The John DeNicola technique.
Is seat of the pants, really. I talk about it now, and it's more so now. It's just stream of consciousness, more or less. I mean, writing for others. I guess we talked about I had a diverse education in music. I started with, rock music of the day, and then I moved into more fusion, jazzy fusion. And then, and then got into Neil Young or whatever. So I had this palette to draw from, and I spent that's kind of what I've sort of rejected in my elder year, was trying to get in other people's heads. Like what would Celine Dion want to sing? What would Eddie Money want to sing? Although John Waite, I worked a lot with John Waite, and that was more collaborative. With having hit records, people might come. It's still a crapshoot, but people might come I get a list of who's looking. And so you're not even working with the artist. You're just writing a song that this doesn't happen so much anymore, but you're writing a song that you think you're getting into their head. What would they want to sing? And I kind of got tired with that. With John Wade, it was different. We worked together a lot.
Was it right after the Babies, or was it later on in John's career?
It was after Missing You.
After Missing You. Okay, very good.
He was on Imago Records at the time we were really working. Imago had a couple of. It didn't last long, but it was Terry Riley. I can't think of Terry's last name, but he started Chrysalis.
Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, Chrysalis. I remember that. Of course, the Babies were on Chrysalis.
Yeah, and then he started his own Imago, and that was John and I started working together. But it's a while since I got into that. That's what was so freeing about OMAD Records and doing my own records. Once I did my own first record, the Why Because, it was like, now this is fun, because I had no constraints, no guidelines, I just do what comes into my head. And as I get older, I'm finding, and I think this is from muscle memory, whatever, my first instinct, if it's a guitar part or a melody for a track I'm writing or whatever, is the best choice. It's like I just lay it down. I'll lay a track down and I'll start singing on it. And that first melody I sing out is what ends up being the melody. It's just, I don't know. I think it's become a little bit of muscle memory and freedom, really.
Awesome. Very good. Now, looking ahead, any upcoming projects, collaborations for 2025? You've got an album in the works. Let's talk about that now.
Yes, I'm about 10 songs, eight finished songs. I've maybe 2 more to finish, and it's like this a song. I put out one already that's from the record. I put it out last year because I was in a band when I was 20 years old. It was a 7-piece horn band called Sweetback, and actually one of the horn players, Rich Canada, went on to Billy Joel's band.
Oh, right. Yeah. The
7-piece horn band doing kind of mostly covers, but we wanted to start doing original stuff. And so it was 2 of my closest friends that I started a band with when I was in 7th grade. A guy named Tim Lawless and another guy, Ken Favre, was the guitarist. And Tim was this singer, this Irish kid who could sound like Ronnie Isley.
Really? Seriously?
Oh man, he was and I
Blue-Eyed
say
Soul.
Yeah, Blue-Eyed Soul for sure. And Tim passed away last year, and we always wanted to. Sweetback always wanted. We were approached by a record label, and we were too young to wrap our heads around it, and we kind of just focused on clubs instead of trying to do original material. So in a way, I'm a lot of these songs, I'd say half of the songs on the new record are as if Sweetback did it. The first one started because Tim's passing, and one of our favorite bands to cover at the time as Sweetback was Steely Dan. That was like, they weren't wildly into Steely Dan as far as, cover bands, whatever. So this song I wrote, King of His Own World, which Tim was, is about him. It's for him. It's a tribute to him. And I got the guys that I had worked together with Sweetback when we were 20 years old, to play. Jeff Lang playing sax. He was one of the original horn players who replaced Richie Canada. Ken Favre and this guy, Greg Schleich, was the first keyboard player. And, I filled the rest in myself, but it's with a 5-piece horn section. And so these songs with Sweetback that are from this forthcoming John DeNicola record are all feature big horn lines and stuff like that.
Good. We're going to close the show with that particular song. But before I want to do that, I know there's everyone who's listening is just fascinated and wants to know a little bit more about you, what you got going on. You're all over social media. You're on. You've got your own website. Could you go through that, John, real quick? And we'll include those down in the show notes.
Yeah, well, there's omadrecords.com, OMAD records.com. There's JohnDeNicola.com. I think all the Facebook and IG,
Instagram. You're on Instagram. Yeah.
John DeNicola Music. And I think, and both of them also have OMAD Records. I think it's just OMAD Records. So John DeNicola Music, OMAD Records. I'm not on TikTok, but
your YouTube, you got YouTube too. So let's include that too.
Yes, OMAD Records also is YouTube.
What I'll do, I'll include those down in the show notes. So all you have to do, you're just one click away of following John DeNicola. John, now, John, the next feature is my favorite of all. It is one that I've done since the show started back in the late 90s. It is called Tales from the Road. These are those infamous stories where things didn't go quite as planned. Kind of think of the movie Spinal Tap. Now, since you've spent a lot of time, you've actually been up with a group and you've toured some there. So I'm going to give this the opportunity to you, either Tales from the Road or Tales from the Studio. What is something that is can you look, it was a catastrophe at the time, but you look at it now going, if I survive that, I can survive just about anything.
Wow. I have something that it's not, I don't know if it fits the category, but we were working OMAD Productions. We weren't a record label yet. We're working with a band called The Sighs, Sighs, in the 90s. And we got them signed. They were power pop-ish. And now, but we're talking 93. We're talking, so Nirvana, Pearl Jam,
Alice in Chains, Soundgarden.
So
yeah.
The kind of Beach Boy, Raspberries type bands were not, exactly. But we did get signed, and we had actually had a minor hit. They had a minor hit. I don't want to say minor hit. It was a top 20. Think About Soul. I don't know if you remember that, but if you heard it, you'd probably remember it. Anyway, so the record comes out, and everybody's excited about it. This is on Charisma. Charisma was a sub of Virgin. A guy named Phil Guerrero. If you know Phil, I don't know if you know Phil. The PR guy. He was a promo guy, radio promo. I'm surprised you never crossed paths. But so as the record's coming out and the song "Think About Soul" is taken off, the label folds into Virgin.
Yeah.
And that was it. I remember from the earlier conversation, my cousin who had a one-stop out in Hicksville, Long Island, I was talking to him, this is years later, right? Many years later. And he goes, "Oh, that's a dead record." And I'm like, "Oh shit, that's a dead record." That's it. It died, because nobody could find it anymore. So, and then we got to Virgin because Phil became the president of Virgin, but he was he was the band's biggest fan, and he was the president of the label, but it didn't translate to the A&R guys. They were,
that's odd. That's odd.
Yeah.
Well, John, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. It's an interesting story.
Good band. You should check the band out. They have great. In fact, OMAD Records just a few years ago put a record out by The Sighs called "Wait on Another Day," and it's stellar. I mean, they were still are.
Awesome, very good. All right, we're going to wrap up the show with "King of His Own World," a song dedicated to your friend Tim from Sweetback. And I got to say thanks so very much for being a part of this show, John. It's been so much fun talking with you. And I hope you had some fun, too, and got a chance to get some of your music out there for the next Academy Awards or next Grammys or whatever it might be. But, John, I really thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy day to be with us.
Oh, thanks so much. I really enjoyed it.
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.